You gotta wake up to a world that's real. You gotta rise up and make it feel. Life in full measure is more than just pleasure. Wake up and live.
Hello and welcome. Today is Wednesday, January the 28th, 2015. This is Paul Sandhu coming to you with another episode of Wake Up and Live Radio. I have on the line with me a repeat and popular guest, the Guerrilla Economist. So I don't want to get into a detailed introduction about V because he's well known to my listeners. So without further ado, hello and welcome, V.
Paul, it's great to be back on. Happy New Year, sir. It's just what an interesting year it's turning out to be.
Well, Happy New Year to you as well, V. And yes, you're right. I have never, in my memory anyways, I don't recall such an explosive start to a new year. So why don't we jump right in with all the, the big events that have been going on, like the crash in the oil pricing, Swiss removing their currency peg, all these announcements coming out from Russia and China about, especially with Russia signing deals with Iran and Iran bypassing the dollar. It just seems to be gathering steam. The Saudi king passed away. I don't know what the implications of that will be. So where would you like to begin?
Well, let's start with oil. I don't know. I don't remember if it was on your show the last time that I spoke. When I made references to oil and where we would be. But, a few months ago and also in December, I said that oil is going to be dropping below the $70 a barrel and getting into, into the $50 range, or close to the $50 range. And that's where we are right now. My sources have said they're going to take down oil to about $39 a barrel. That's the target. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to permanently be there, but it will touch $39 a barrel. And one of the things I've also said, folks, is that, this is going to destroy the American shale oil and natural gas industry. And already the rumblings of layoffs, the lumberings of not just layoffs within the oil sector, but the destruction that it's causing to a lot of financial instruments that are backed by oil, that are collateralized by oil and the trade of oil. And folks need to understand something. Oil is just not something that's just put into your gas tank as gasoline. It's something that's not just used in just products and cosmetics and this, that, and the other. People need to understand what oil really is. Oil is a financialized instrument. It's highly financialized, okay? And one of the analogies that I like to give is what's happening with oil is very synonymous to what we've seen in 2008 with subprime, okay? Just as the subprime, mortgage crisis, where, at one point you had a mortgage on your house and the bank listed that mortgage as an asset, something that it could rely on as a source of income for the next 30-some-odd years, has become incredibly financialized, where it is a financial instrument used in collateralization, used in various, credit default swaps, mortgage-backed securities, credit debt, collateralized debt obligations, things of that sort. Oil is the same way. It's being leveraged to the hilt that one missing payment, one domino that can't fulfill its role, its payment, its support, and the entire thing falls apart. And we're seeing the bust of that. The saving grace for the time being, the little bit of buffer that we do have, and in spite of all the nut jobs out there saying that, hey, 2014 was the warmest on record, what planet were these idiots living on? 2014 broke records in cold temperatures. Over 250-some-odd records were shattered in 2014 in terms of record-breaking cold, freezing conditions. Never, and it's been over 100 years since the Great Lakes have frozen over, and they're still frozen. So the nonsense of 2014 being warm is just that's what it is. It's a fabricated lie.
I would
And
vouch
so
for
the
that, V,
saving grace.
because up in the Northeast where we are, yeah, 2014 was the most brutal winter I remember
Oh,
in my memory.
horrible, horrible. I remember talking to you in 2014. We talked about how cold it was.
Right.
So 2015, the saving grace for the oil and gas industry is that, again, we're having a cold winter. Thank God that we had a major snowstorm in New York that just completely bypassed us. But still gave the government, the state and local governments here an opportunity to flex their martial law control grid muscles. But Massachusetts got walloped, okay, and a few other states in New England got hit hard. So it's still a cold winter, and that is what's keeping things afloat. What happens when we enter the spring? What happens when the weather starts to warm up, and all of a sudden you will see an absolute implosion? Whatever's left of the shale oil industry in the United States will be gone because it's not viable at $47 a barrel. It's not viable at $45. It's not viable at $55 or even $39. It's only semi-break even at $60 to $65 a barrel. So you're seeing this is going to set off financial reverberations throughout everything. And folks, when you have oil at $39 a barrel, $40 a barrel, that means it's less dollars that are being used to chase it. Okay? Then on top of that, you have the dislocation of various currencies away from the dollar peg and using, the dislocation of oil away from the dollar peg, and other currencies like the ruble and the yuan and the euros are being used to purchase oil. And that's profound, because already it's getting into consciousness. Now, the whole thing is this. The entire world reserve currency nonsense, that whole title is held together by confidence. The entire petrodollar is held together by confidence. Okay, it's make-believe confidence. What happens when that confidence is gone? What happens when that currency, one of my guys, Ken Short, just said it best. He said, when people stop believing in your currency, you still have a currency left. That's the most perfect way I can say it. If people stop believing in your currency, do you really have a currency at that point?
Well, I would add to that in case of the dollar, it's not just a confidence game, it's also a barrel of a big gun that backs it up as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's probably the bigger reason why it has maintained its status as long as it has.
Right. And you know what people need to understand here? When you look at the dollar, it's backed up by the full faith and confidence in the United States government, right? The real translation, folks, is that it's backed up by the full power and strength of the United States military. That's what it's all about. It is economic subjugation to the barrel of a gun and Tomahawk cruise missiles.
Right.
That's what the whole thing is about, Paul.
Yeah.
So that's what we have going into 2015. And then, one of the warnings I put out, right before the turn of the new year, there was the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And for those that don't know, Formula One is a huge event for a lot of these elites. They gather together. They fly in all their prostitutes. They have their big regalia and their big parties, and they get together under the cloud of this racing that's going on. And as billions of dollars are spent, moving racing teams from all over the world from different countries to converge on these race locations, it provides a perfect cover for these elites to come together and plan out meetings, because for them they get to plan out meetings, and Formula One to them is also their highest form of a chariot race, because it's the most technologically advanced cars on the planet. So the last Formula One, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at the Yas Marina circuit, you've had a couple of announcements that came forward through a couple of meetings that my sources have had. One of which it was said that look for a false flag event sometime between January and February. And I believe completely, looking back at it, I think it was definitely the Charlie Hebdo. Okay, because Charlie Hebdo, a week before it had that false flag event, which was completely staged, where cops were lying on the ground, supposedly shot, were like taking selfies and then lying back down on the ground.
Yeah, I saw a video of that. Yes, that was quite.
It's hilarious.
It would be comical if it
Exactly.
wasn't so serious. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. Then the fake, solidarity walk, that photo opportunity where it looked like these world leaders were walking in front of millions of people. The fact that a week before the Charlie Hebdo attack, we had Rothschild, a Rothschild company, bought out Charlie Hebdo. And Charlie Hebdo wasn't selling much of anything. It was a satirical, it's the French equivalent of Mad Magazine.
Right.
It was barely selling anything. And right after the attacks, right before the attack, Rothschild buys it, there's an attack, and all of a sudden they're selling tens of millions right now. Okay? So it's unbelievable. So the Charlie Hebdo attack sets up a false flag stage, and we've had some false flags building up to it. The first one being the hostage situation in Australia. That was at a Swiss cafe across the street from the Australian Central Bank, where 11 hostages were 11 people were taken hostage, and then the hostage taker was killed along with 5 other people at 11:30 London time. I mean, there's so much numerology involved in that; it's ridiculous. But that's the you have that situation. Then you had Charlie Hebdo. Now we're building up to ISIS, and now we're seeing leaks where you have U.S. soldiers that are covertly in the Ukraine telling Ukrainian camera people, "Get out of my face." Okay, in clear upstate New York English. So you have that occurring. You have this buildup that's happening in Kuwait with the United States military. Then you had the Saudi king, Abdullah, who died. And when they announced it, the guy actually died 2 weeks before the announcement. But they waited until the 23rd at 1 a.m. To make that announcement. Okay? So, there's a lot of profound things with Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of things going on. This lot of proxy events and this two-card Monty, this back and forth, this covert and overt operations that are occurring. On the overt side, Saudi Arabia plays the veneer that they are an ally of the United States. On the covert side, they want to get the heck away from the U.S. and get out of the dollar and link in with the Russians and the Chinese. That's what they want to do. Building up to King Abdullah's death, I was the guy that broke the news that the Saudi royal prince, one of them, was carjacked in Paris, of all places. Okay,
yes.
And for folks that don't know, if you look at gematria, okay, Paris is 9 and France is 11, so you have 9/11. So Charlie Hebdo was their 9/11, so to speak. Okay, now the Saudi prince was carjacked by a special ops team. You had 2 covert vans block off his 10-car caravan. Okay, take $300,000 of cash off him, which for a Saudi prince is pocket change. And the most important thing was that secret documents were lifted. What were those secret documents? My sources have told me that those secret documents are agreements that have to do with the Russians and the Chinese, as well as the French, for a new energy deal. Okay, and this is what was being hammered out. And you see all of these, looks like on the surface, disconnected events, but are very incredibly connected. And let's not forget Christophe de Margerie, the CEO of Total Petroleum, who was assassinated, who was killed when his plane was blown up. Okay, let's not forget that. And who was Christophe de Margerie dealing with? Well, Christophe de Margerie was dealing with Putin. He was a good friend of Putin. He was a good friend of the Russians. Total Petroleum is a sponsor of the World Petroleum Forum in Russia. Okay, there was a petroleum convention there that they sponsor. Total Petroleum was involved in the South Pars energy development deal with the Iranians. Okay, they, at 2006, supposedly stopped that. On paper, they did. But they continued supplying the much-needed logistics for Iranian energy development in cahoots with Russian engineers, and the whole thing was bankrolled by BNP. And that's why BNP got hit with a fine. So you have all this buildup of tension going on, Paul. You have the Mistral deal that's on again and off again and on again and off again, and now it seems like it's coming back on again. All right, and who was behind the Mistral deal, really, originally? It was Nicolas Sarkozy. And what's happening with Sarkozy? He's all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the guy's riddled with scandals. Okay? And who else is connected with Sarkozy? You got Lagarde. Now, I can't stand the giraffe-necked woman called Lagarde, okay? But she is highly connected to Sarkozy, and she's also highly corrupt. So you have this crap storm brewing between the Middle East, in Europe. You have the Iranian connection. You have the ongoing fascist sanctions against the Russians, which is not working at all, by the way. And then you have what I talked about back in 2012, the Brexit, the Greek exit from the euro. It's happening. It's all coming to a head, so to speak. And what happened also this week, Paul, we've seen parity for the first time. Between the euro and the dollar, they were at a 1-to-1 parity. It was incredible.
Yeah,
so it is
incredible.
turning out to be a hell of a year.
So, okay, let's put some of these pieces together. Now, you started off with oil. So, what's looking into the crystal ball, like, what does that bode for the petrodollar? What does it bode for the world financial system? What does it bode for even the price of oil, let's say? And, it's obviously going to destroy the shale oil industry, and it is. In Canada, it's having a devastating effect already.
Oh, yeah.
So, what do you see going into, into the rest of this year then? As far as the oil story is concerned.
Sure. With oil, the way you got to see it is this, okay? Picture a funeral service, all right? And we're all at the church, and we're all giving eulogies, and then the dollar is put into the casket, and the casket is put into the hearse. That's where we are right now, okay? We are en route to the cemetery, okay? 2014 was the year that everybody gave their eulogy for the dollar. Everybody stood up. The priest say the things that he had to say. The eulogies were given. They talked about how wonderful the dollar was, and now they've put it into the casket. The casket is rolled into the hearse, and we are all en route to the cemetery. That's where we are. And by the end of 2015, just like my 4-star general sources said, there will be a complete undermining of the dollar by the end of 2015. It will no longer be considered a world reserve currency. Now, people will say, well, that's the end of the dollar completely. It's going to hyperinflate. No. They will do whatever they can to manipulate the manipulations, even if it means the manipulations are done at home and not so much as they used to do abroad. Okay? But the whole house of cards will cease to exist by 2017, folks. That's the date that all these guys are heading for. Okay, so this whole petrodollar, it's doomed. It's a game over scenario. Okay, the HSBC report that I had back in April of 2014 saying that the Chinese yuan supplanted the euro as the second most used currency in trade. That's incredible. Look for those numbers to increase because the petro-yuan is emerging. On top of that, okay, look at the complete loss of confidence in the dollar on the global stage. It's down tremendously. I mean, we talked about this last time. Some reports are putting it at around 40 to 45% usage right now globally, which at one point was over 70%. So the use of the dollar in trade is completely diminished. So going into 2015, folks, this is the last one. So if you're not preparing, all right, to get into the tangibles, to get into hard assets, you're this is the year to do it. This is your final year to do it. Okay, you got maybe up to 2016, but this is it, man. That's where oil is going, Paul. That's where the petrodollar is going. We can say it's unofficially a dead currency. Okay, it is a It is a dead currency. It is a failed currency that belongs to a failed state. Okay, everybody in the United States, we're all existing on borrowed time. We're all existing on borrowed time. This veneer of civilization that we are so used to, this society, this lifestyle, this quality of life, that's about to get vaporized.
Now, some people argue, that look at how the dollar index has skyrocketed, and that's indicating a strong dollar. Like Jack Lew comes out and said, "Oh yeah, strong dollar is good for the U.S. economy." So, what is the real reason for this, unprecedented rise in the value of the dollar, or the perceived value, let's say?
When you look at Forex, okay, you have here's what's happening. They're putting so much artificial pressure on propping up the dollar that those pressures, through a feedback loop, a negative feedback loop, is affecting the euro. Okay? Where the euro is crashing. This is what we're seeing. This is what I talked about with the euro and the dollar being at parity. Okay? That negative feedback pressure is causing the euro to crack, which is putting pressure on every other Forex. What's also happened? What happened before? Look, and folks, I said this on record on 2012. In 2012, when the dollar comes apart, you're going to have a strong dollar, but it's going to put a lot of pressure on ancillary support structures of the dollar. Meaning the real collapse is going to occur existentially outside of the United States before the tsunami comes rushing in on home. So we have the euro cracking. But what happened, Paul, before the euro started cracking? Well, look at the yen. The yen was a basket case 2 weeks ago, if we all remember that, right? The yen was skyrocketing in value, which is the worst thing you could happen if you're a Japanese investor, right?
Right.
You had the Nikkei, that was going on up and down roller coaster ride. And all the things that were happening with the yen and the bond purchasing, the QE that kicked in suddenly in Japan, that is due to pressure of artificially pumping up the dollar even higher. And now we're seeing the secondary ancillary support system, which is the euro. And that is bringing it down. And what happened? The Swiss, who through proxy has pegged their currency, the franc, with the euro, have all of a sudden saying, with the declining euro, are seeing their balance sheets explode. It's getting harder for the Swiss to cover their debts. And folks, they don't have the 1,046 metric tons of gold that they say they do. They really don't. The Swiss National Bank doesn't. So what did the SNB do? They immediately took off the peg to the euro, which caught everybody with their pants down. And you've seen some of the biggest Forex firms that are no longer with us today. There were accounts that went negative 300, 400, 500,000, 900,000 in a minute. So it's unbelievable, and not only is it unbelievable, Paul, it's unprecedented. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw that coming. So
except maybe I heard J.P. Morgan did quite well on it. So
of course. Well, you got to understand, J.P. Morgan did well. Morgan Stanley did well. And who happens to work for Morgan Stanley and specializes in euro and franc swaps and IR swaps pertaining to that? Giacomo Draghi, Mario Draghi's little boy. Okay?
all in the family, yeah?
All in the family. They made a killing. Nobody saw the S&B move except Draghi, Giacomo, Diamond, Blackfine. Those guys saw the moves. They did well. Okay? So that's the whole thing. And of course, Barclays And then I think also Lloyd's did pretty well, if I remember. But everybody else got caught with their pants down. And you got Forex firms and Forex traders that are no longer working.
Right.
That are out looking for a job right now. It's unbelievable. Okay, so what's happening is they're crashing the euro. They're taking the proxy pegs off. So what they're doing is they're opening up the pressure valves to release some of the pressure in the system to keep the fraud going. They can't continue doing this because now the game's changed. Look at what the Russians and the Chinese are doing. All this nonsense. Okay, all this nonsense occurs. And the Russians and Chinese are continuing to move forward. And they're like, oh, you hear the news. Oh, China has a $93 billion bubble in this sector. Who cares? The Chinese knew that they will have to create bubbles to play in the game. But what they have been doing is buying the hard asset tangibles needed to weather a bubble pop that is coming. They knew they had to do that. Yeah. So they're going to be fine. So they're still buying hard assets. They're still buying gold. Same thing with the Russians. So it's not like in the 80s or in the 70s when the paper pushers had all the control in the world. They had all the financial levers. They control everything. The paper game is over. The best analogy I can give you, Paul, is that you look at the end of World War I, right? What happened? Well, the brilliant French engineers in World War I, at the end of it, decided they're going to build a Maginot Line, a string of embankments and embankments and fortifications that will ensure that the Germans will never again invade France, and no enemy will come through that direction. Okay, so they spent at that time billions of dollars, created these stupid bridges to nowhere kind of jobs for ditch diggers and people who wanted to cement mason guys, and the engineers were bragging about how wonderful the Maginot Line is. It's impenetrable. So what did Hitler do? He flew over it with planes and dropped bombs on it. You see, folks, the paper, the dollar, all these stupid financial instruments, all these currencies, that's the Maginot Line. That's the Maginot Line. They thought, just like the French engineers at the end of World War I, the financial engineers of 2015 think the same thing. It's impenetrable. But what the Russians and the Chinese are doing in order to break the paper is you break it with a hard asset. You break it by taking the currency that's pegged to all this, that is pegged to these commodities. You destroy it, and that's what they're doing. So that Maginot Line of the West is falling apart, Paul, and that's what we're seeing. All these pressures, they cannot continue with this, and the world sees this for what it is. Do you have a currency? Like Ken Shorter says, do you have a currency when nobody else believes in it anymore? Do you still have a currency? The answer is no.
No, that's obvious. A lot of people. Maybe in our stupor bowl, generation that lives here, they don't understand it. But to the outside world, it is very apparent that the dollar is toxic, and they have done so much that I have seen in the last couple of years, particularly to indicate that yes, they have certainly planned for its disappearance. It's not just as to replace it or run side by side with it. I think they have actually planned for its replacement, and it seems like it's those days are quite close.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is this. Sometimes I get emails from people, and at the end of the day, people want a paper strategy. Okay, everything is coming apart at the seams, and you have those emails where people just don't get it. They're asking for paper strategies in a paper world that's about to go, that's about to get burned up, so to speak. Folks, this is a hard asset game. Either you're in it now or you're not, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's what people don't understand. That yeah, you can play the paper game, you can go buy stocks, etc. And some people have made off like bandits in that game, but eventually, it's when the reverse happens, as it must, then it's quite. It doesn't take very long to get wiped out. Like those bankers and those other people jumping out of windows in '29. I mean, that kind of scenario is very likely to be repeated and very soon.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of jumping out of windows, we just had another flyer who decided to take a flight out of I think the 23rd window or the 39th window in Hong Kong. It was an ICBC banker at a Citigroup Plaza. So that's interesting. It's very
Well, yeah, that story just keeps on keeping on. Like,
oh my God, yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And then some other stories, some guy in Europe who it was another banker. He decided to blow his brains out. So it's unbelievable what's happening.
And there was this guy in California that was found in a motel somewhere or something. So it's just yes, it's all over the place. So, and I suppose that makes a lot of sense that there must be a lot of loose ends with that this fraud is so rampant. There have to be a lot of loose ends. So I guess they are tying up the loose ends, at least in the middle and upper middle levels. To protect those that are at the top. I think that's what's going on with all these suiciding bankers that continues this year as it did last year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. And this thing will continue. I mean, we got close to, I think, maybe four. I've lost count of how many guys are dead at this point. I really have. I think it's probably a little over 40 right now. It's unbelievable.
So what about, let's talk a little bit about Greece. Greece has been, of course, in the news for the past 3-4 years, and it was on the brink, I believe, in 2011 that it was ready to become the Lehman and take the whole system down. Do you think we are back at that place again?
Yeah. Not only are we there, back at the place, now we have all the instruments in place to make sure that happens. Before, when this whole entire Euro crisis occurred, you had forces, you had factions that stepped in and ensured that the status quo will continue. You immediately had Goldman Sachs guys come in, implement austerity. You had any sort of a populist movement become demonized and bemoaned and lambasted in the media. And they ensured that the Eurocrats and the bankster cronies were elected into office. Okay, so they kept that charade going for about 2.5 years. Okay, and now with the recent elections in Greece, we see a popular theme, and that's nationalism. Okay, and we're seeing nationalistic swings, nationalistic fervor beginning to build up in many, many countries across Europe. Greece is one thing. Okay? We're seeing it in Germany. We're seeing it in Spain. We're seeing it in Ireland. We're seeing it in many parts of the Eurozone that's breaking it. Okay? We're seeing it in Italy. They're sick of it. All right? So, with Greece, the latest election of the Syriza party. I don't even know how you pronounce that, but Syriza, whatever the name of that party is that just got elected. This is going to ensure that they will break out from the euro. Their goal, their entire platform that they got elected on is we're going to renegotiate the debt, we're going to ask for debt forgiveness, and we're going to get the heck out of the euro. And back in 2012, I was told that that was the plan, and that the drachma will be brought back, that the drachma presses are all ready to go. And I think that's exactly what we're going to witness in 2015. Greece will exit the euro.
And why is that? Why is that significant? When Greece is, when you look at the big scheme of things, Greece is a very small fish in a very, very big pond. So why is that significant if they do exit? I know it's in their own interest, but how does that affect the rest of what the European, the EU, and the EMU and everything else? What implications will it have for the financial system?
Well, number one, it's a confidence game. If Greece leaves, it's going to signal to all the other nations that are suffering, the southern European countries that are suffering under austerity, that are suffering under the bondage of the euro, to leave the euro, to leave the union. They will exit as well. Okay. The other thing that no one is talking about is that Greece is rich in resources. Okay. And right off within the Aegean itself, right, there are lots of natural gas deposits that are in Greece, right? And in fact, there is a lot of back and forth between the Greeks and the Turks as to, in fact, there's a lot of back and forth between the Greeks, the Cypriots, Cyprus, remember that country that got bailed in?
Yes.
And the Turks. Okay? There's a lot of dispute they've been having for years between what's called I remember it's called the exclusive economic zone. There's a natural shelf there. Okay, it's a continental shelf there that is rich in natural gas. And notice how the Turks are swinging east. Okay.
Yes.
And the Greeks are swinging east as well. There's that
Russia made them an offer recently to quit the EU.
Bingo. Sorry, Paul, say that again?
No, I said Russia. I had read that Russia had made the Greeks an offer, quit the EU, and for one thing, we'll just start exporting our food to you again. And of course, that's just one of the benefits, but I'm sure they've offered them a lot more in case if they want to swing east.
And they will swing east. Okay, they will swing east because now there's a lot of moves. And look, this is what people are starting to understand. Either we stay in the EU and have our country carved up and sold piecemeal to multinationals, or we man up, we leave the EU, reinstate the drachma, tell the banksters to go take a flying leap off a cliff, cozy up to the Russians in a mutually beneficial financial agreement and energy deal, and you're going to see the Russians come in just like what they're going to do for Iran, just like the Russians are doing for the Turks, just like what they're doing for the Indians. They're going to be coming in and doing an energy deal for Greece, which, when you look at it, how perfectly does the Greek peace move directly onto the Russian or Vladimir Putin's chessboard? That pawn, he just captured a pawn. He just captured it. A very important piece right off their table. Now, the EU, which is a crumbling joke of a monetary union, they had that chance with Turkey. They've been snubbing Turkey a chance at EU membership for how many years now, Paul? Okay, since the EU was created, the Turks wanted to be, hey, we're part of NATO. Why don't you make us part of the EU? No. So the Turks said, okay, go take a flying leap. And now the Turks have an energy deal with the Russians. Well, the Russians are going to be building out 24 nuclear power plants for the Turks, as well as setting up their natural gas supplies.
Right, they're bringing the South Stream through Turkey, from what I understand.
Bingo, the Turk Stream. Now watch this. When you look at that, I told you, there's a huge gas field between Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey. What do you think the Russians are doing? Do you see the plan now? They're going to not only cut the Turk Stream pipeline up and into the Greek areas, but they're also going to develop that whole entire gas field that's in the Aegean Sea. That's going to be another pipeline.
Right.
This is checkmate. I mean, they blew it. The Europeans had a chance. They screwed up Ukraine. That's backfired because the short-sighted idiots who run U.S. policy have screwed that up royally. They've completely alienated Greece, so the Greeks are about to leave the EU, and they will. And they're putting the pressure on the Germans. The Germans ain't going to stick around for this. Whatever chance they had to win, they've lost. This is a grand checkmate. Watch the Russians gobble up Greece. And now when they take Greece and they bring Greece onto their side, there you go, the second pipeline. The Greek, Cypriot, Turkish pipeline is about to be emerged.
So then the Russians are the ones, everybody talks about Russia being encircled, but Russia is actually encircling Europe with their energy supplies. So they're making them even more dependent on them rather than less dependent.
If the U.S., people say, oh, look, the U.S. is encircling Russia with anti-missiles and missile defense and military bases. Folks, it's a joke. It's a joke. At any moment, if the Russians decide, and there's an interesting link, I put it up on my Twitter, which is an interview from a high-level Russian military source, and he describes exactly how Russia would go in and take a place like Ukraine, which the crew members, and I was one of the first guys to break this, the crew members of the USS Donald Cook, which is a missile frigate, an Aegis-class missile frigate, a destroyer, that was brought into the Caspian Sea to flex the U.S. muscle in the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, okay? And what happened? That destroyer was turned into a floating barge in a matter of minutes. Okay, the Russians hit it with an energy weapon. Then the crews were absolutely panicked because their communication devices were down. Their Aegis radar, which is a vaunted radar system that people talk about as one of the most powerful radar systems in the world, was shut down, and the ship was powerless, just floating. It got hit by a Russian energy weapon, and then the Russians took an Su-24 Fencer, okay, which is their version of an F-111, and they were just doing strafing runs, doing bombing runs on the boat, simulating bombing runs for about 90 minutes. Finally, when the boat was finally towed to harbor, you had members of the crew that are willing to resign on the spot, signing their resignation because they do not want to deal with this kind of suicide mission. Fast forward to what this Russian military source was saying. They said, when we decide to go into Ukraine, if we wanted to, the first thing what would happen is that every single electronic device, cell phone, communications, radar, that's all going to get shut down. Second thing we do is we make sure that no plane, no vehicle, no engine, nothing is running. It's a high-level, very advanced EMP targeted attack. And then from there, the most advanced attack helicopters will swoop in and start cleaning up. And then their land force will come in and wipe the floor. Okay? Folks, that's the modern Russian military that nobody talks about. There's not some army and sneakers. There's an advanced military. Okay? Do you think they're worried about the U.S. putting up a couple of anti-ballistic missile things when they have things that can take it out with no problem? They're not worried about it. So what the Russians are doing and the Chinese are doing, they are encircling the United States and Europe and the entire Western proxies. They're circling them everywhere. Okay, they're circling them in Europe. They're circling them in the Caribbean with the deals that they're doing with the Cubans, with a few other Caribbean islands. They're circling them all up and down Central and South America, right in America's backyard. And watch what Canada and the deals they do with the Chinese. They're going to be circling in the north. The U.S. is being isolated. It's being isolated. They're giving no incentives for anybody to say, hey, you know what, I want to go play with the Americans. It's a win-win situation. No. We're being made to look like the losers of the world. It's being done on purpose and by design.
But that, of course, is not what a person would hear in the mainstream media. according to Mr. Obama, the shadow of the crisis has passed. So, in your opinion, the shadow of the crisis has not only not passed, it seems to be growing darker.
Oh my God! I mean, the shadow of the crisis is no longer it's not even a shadow anymore. It's an ominous, dark gloom. It's unbelievable. It's whatever these people will tell you, folks. You got to remember, it's the exact opposite. If you whatever they say, just think the exact opposite, and you got the truth. Okay, that's basically what it looks like.
So, what are some of the other significant events or things that might be happening in the coming months that you are focused on at this moment in time?
Say again?
I said, what are some of the other significant events that you're looking at that might be upon the horizon?
Well, the immediate thing, and I want everybody to pay attention to, is this. Back in November and even in December, I'm on record saying, hey, you know what, here's the deal, here's what my sources are telling me, here's what a lot of the intel is coming out. Look out for the dates building up to March 17th, okay? Anywhere between the 17th and the 21st is going to be a very, very critical time. We might see another false flag. We might see something happen in the market. And all of a sudden, The Economist magazine comes out with their occultic 2015 cover. If anybody has a chance to see that, I don't know if you got a chance to peek at that, Paul, the cover of The Economist 2015.
Yes, I did. Yes, with the mushroom cloud and all that other...
all the occult stuff. If you look at the dates on the floor, okay, it says 11/3 and 11/17, okay? I'm sorry. Those are European dates, man. 3/17 and 3/11. Okay. 11/3 and So those are all European dates. Or 3/5. I don't remember offhand, but those are European dates. So it's signifying March. Okay. So going into March, you could expect some stuff to happen. That's what the intel is saying. What it is at this moment, I'm not exactly clear. That will need some further vetting on my part. And once I know what it is, I will definitely share that information. But going forward into this year, that's what I see. I see this is going to be a very tumultuous year. A lot of volatility in the marketplace. The forex. Oh my God! I mean, how many forex firms are actually doing well? One of the big four here was completely shut down after that SMB thing. The manipulations are really starting to backfire, and they're causing a great deal of damage as the shock of the dollar toxicity reverberates throughout the whole entire financial markets. But that's what's occurring here, Paul.
I think some of these the dollars demise. I think they're setting up some let's say plausible reasons that they'll be offering. Like, for example, they arrested these Russians in New York, I believe, and charging them with some kind of spying. That they were talking about how to bring down the stock market or something. So I think when that crash happens, look for some scapegoats coming from Russia, Iran, wherever the heck they're going to be. But
sure,
right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: they kind of prepared everybody's mind for that. You had a year and a half ago, you had that movie come out, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit, which is about the Russian plot to collapse the U.S. economy.
Right. Yeah, I saw that recently. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been put out there. That's number one. Number two, you had all these stories being leaked of Russian spies and how they're planning on to take down the economy, and then about a week ago, you had some people say, hey, our economy can crash because of computer hackers from Russia. So all this thing is Russia. They're trying to paint the enemy because these idiots want a war, because they think war will be, let's get some one last ditch profits in, let's make some money, let's create a war and move on here. Move on to the next carcass they're going to, or the next country that they want to pick clean. But what they don't realize is this: You can prevent a war by simply ending the currency that's the main problem in this whole entire thing. That's the dollar, and that's what it comes down to. Is right now the Russians and the Chinese are faced with this: kill the dollar or World War III. That's the choice right now: kill the dollar or World War III, where there's a massive loss of life. And I think the options that they're going to go with is option A. Because unlike the crazy psychopathic neo-Satanists that run the United States, the leaders in Russia and China don't want to see billions of their people wiped out. They don't want to see millions die. They don't want to see the suffering that that's going to bring to the entire human race. Okay? So they're moving in a very timely manner, overtly and covertly. And there's so many things that are happening right now, folks, that are in the background, that are in the scene, some real spy versus spy stuff that are occurring right now as I'm talking to you, that is ensuring that the peace continues and we can go through this transition peaceably. And that's my hope and prayer. Will the United States go through a crash? Will it be catastrophic to the U.S.? Yes, it will be. But I'd rather deal with an economic hardship than a nuclear holocaust. And that's what the world is facing today. So the choice the Chinese and the Russians have in 2015, kill the dollar or World War III.
Okay, yeah, well, that's what you'd say a no-brainer as to what choice would be the right choice to make. But my only concern would be about the boys on the other side of this deal. You know, what they would do when, well, I'm sure they already know that this is inevitable, and I suppose that's one of the reasons why they have moved from small fry like Iraq and Libya and Syria even perhaps to bigger fish to fry like in Ukraine by provoking
Right.
Russia. So there seems to be some strong indication that yes, a war would not entirely be undesirable by some of these psychopaths that, you know, have far too much power and wealth and far too evil, who would not think twice about, you know, doing something which you and I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's my prognosis at the moment for 2015.
Yes, it certainly has started off as a very, very interesting year, you know, and it's off to. So stock market, like, you know, this, do you foresee like a 29 type crash somewhere down the line?
Not in 2015. 2015, the market is going to be, you're going to see the Dow move higher, S&P is going to, whatever losses it'll have, the trading computers will kick in and recoup those losses. Okay, the suckers will still play the market. It's still going to be a very tradable market for those who want to play in it. So you ain't got no market worries in 2015. And whatever happens, you know, within the market or within the geopolitical sphere that causes a market to undulate or to drop in value temporarily is only going to be a very temporary thing for 2015, and they will make this circus run. 2015, they'll make the circus run, even though all hell is starting to break loose all around them. This charade will continue in 2015, unfortunately.
So how does that bode for precious metals then?
I think precious metals is going to be volatile. I mean, the code given to us back in May of 2014 was that they're going to get into their precious metals positions, number one, and number two, they're going to churn the market. And I think we've seen that. We've seen the churning of silver. We've seen the beat down of silver down to $15. Now it's back up to $19. I mean, huge moves here, folks, okay? Gold going from $1,300 to $1,200 to $1,100. I mean, it's been all over the place. Okay, nobody could accurately predict what's going to happen the next day in the precious metals market. I mean, we have some clues on how these things work, the inverse Nikkei and the repo markets and things of that sort. But you know, when you look at it as a whole, you know, with the precious metals, I think this year is going to be a lot of volatility in precious metals, and use that as an opportunity to buy. That's the best thing I can tell you. You know, don't look for the $5,000 or $2,000 an ounce gold this year. It's not going to happen.
You don't think it could go to 2,000 this year?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think 2016, but not 2015. This is or maybe even close to the end of 2015. But as of now, no. I don't see no, because remember they're going to keep this thing going for as long as possible. And if precious metals do rise, it'll be towards the final quarter of this year. That's it.
Unless somebody, like Russia's already announced that they're dropping the dollar, but
Yeah.
let's say something like if China was to make an announcement like that, that would be that could really send the precious metals skyrocketing, could it not?
It absolutely could, but China doesn't want to do that now because they still have a great deal of U.S. Treasuries that they're holding that they need to offload.
Right.
And and why just dump it on the market, okay, and then reduce the value of or limit the ability of what they need to accomplish. They're using those treasuries to buy off governments, to strike deals, to create infrastructure projects throughout the world. They're paving the way for the petro yuan. They're paving the way for the new economic powerhouse that is China. And it's all done and financed through U.S. dollars. That's the irony of this whole entire thing.
Why? And if I was in their position, that's exactly what I'd be doing too. I'd be spending those as fast and furiously as I could before pulling the plug on it, and so that's exactly what we have seen happening. All right, before we go, like it seems like to me there's a lot of turmoil everywhere. Is Japan still a basket case?
Oh my gosh, yes. Japan is the basket case. There's a great article that I wrote on roguemoney.net. If people get a chance to go check it out, it's a membership-only site. It's $2.99 a month. But there's a great article there called The Mischief Engine, and I detail for you, like nobody else can, about why the importance of Japan and how it all really plays in from the insider perspective, from a geopolitical intelligence insider perspective. And that's something that nobody else in the financial field, or none of these other economists we're talking heads, haven't even touched. And you got to read The Mischief Engine. I put that took me a while to put all the pieces together for that, and that details exactly why Japan is the basket case, because of all the things we've done with Japan throughout the years, and we've built it up as an engine of fraud. We built it up as an ancillary device for the dollar, and to make sure that it is used as a device to prop up the king dollar, so to speak.
Right on. Okay, and finally, that other major power of the Second World War, Germany. How long do you think before there is going to be a split between the Germans and the Yanks, and Germany goes towards Russia?
I think 2015 will be monumental. I think this year it's going to be a watershed year, and I think if there's going to be a move of Germany out of the euro, and I think it will probably happen in 2016.
Okay.
But 2015, I don't see it occurring. But 2016, I can see a very strong possibility of a German exit. But that being said, I mean, there's a lot of things Germany's doing right now to insulate themselves from the problems in the eurozone, and to insulate themselves from the dollar, to ensure that their economy stays vibrant with the trade with Russia. These sanctions are hurting the Germans bad, and they're doing whatever they can to rectify this whole entire situation.
Oh yeah, the sanctions are hurting the Germans, the Italians, the Spaniards, all the European countries, especially the southern, and I'm sure also like up north in Finland and Sweden and stuff, because they do a lot of trade. And I was even reading that a lot of exposure of some Austrian banks to Eastern Europe and Russia, so they are under a great deal of stress. So yes, none of these guys in that part of the world are happy with these sanctions. And what do I hear now? That they want to impose even more sanctions. And Medvedev came out yesterday and he said that if they even attempt to remove Russia from the SWIFT system, that their response will be, well, swift, and it'll be without limit.
Yeah, it definitely will be. It definitely will be swift. No doubt about it, Paul.
All right, V, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on. I appreciate all your information, and could go ahead and give out your contact information and your website, and
Sure.
let's get together again in the near future.
Absolutely. Folks, you can follow me on roguemoney.net. That's my website. If anybody has any questions on anything, please feel free to contact me at guerrillaeconomist@gmail.com. And that's Guerrilla spelled G-U-E.
It looks to me from where I stand, the sea of life is getting out of hand. It's time just now to take a look and see all of this in God's book. When the tide gets close to you, the other bank seems far away. Remember on the Sea of Galilee, Jesus the Master knew what to do, and he looked up to the Father. I'll never worry him to bother, worry him, no. He had faith to know nothing's too hard for the Father, nothing's too hard, nothing's too hard, nothing's too hard, nothing's too hard. Therefore take thought when the sea is troubled and it seems it won't be calm. Remember on the Sea of Galilee, Jesus the troubled sea did calm, and he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, peace be still. And the wind ceased and there was a great calm. The wind knew it was God's will, and he looked up